Yeah, man, I'll kick your ass at Diddy Kong. I got all my N64 stuff in a box down here, so let me find it. Hey Julie, I was looking through our old Nintendo stuff and I found this one, Yooka-Laylee. I don't remember this one. You heard of it? Hey there, Jellyheads! Welcome to our special video episode and review of Yooka-Laylee.
Ooh. Why are you all looking at me? I've never played this game.
We have with us
the
biggest Playtonic fan in the country.
I don't know if I'd go as far to say that, but I'm up there.
Hey, I think you should make that claim, and if anybody refutes it, then you can fight him.
I'll be like, I'll fly out there. I'll defend Yooka-Laylee.
And when you say the biggest Platonic fan, that's the company that made...
The developer of
Yooka-Laylee. Is this the only game they've made so far?
Yes.
That's correct.
Yeah, they created this company to make this game and kickstarted it. Julie gave them a lot of that money.
A good chunk.
And now the game's out and you've played all of it.
I have. I've 100%ed it. I've seen everything there is to see in the game. I think I'm pretty confident in saying that. And I like it, but the reviews for this game are all over the board, and it's one of the most divisive games I've ever seen.
Certainly one of the most controversial games to release in the last couple of years. So before we get into what other people are saying, what's your take on the game? So just some background for anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about. This game is the spiritual successor to banjo-kazooie.
Yes.
It's sort of looking to usher in a new age of 3D platformers, looking back to that golden age of the late 90s when platformers were kind of the king of the home console video game library.
Yeah.
And before they were dethroned by the first-person shooters. So yeah, Playtonic
is essentially made up of a bunch of employees who left Rare, which is the company who made like Donkey Kong Country and Banjo-Kazooie. And they left, currently they work at Microsoft, and Microsoft, it's not outright said, but it seems like they wanted to make Banjo 3, and Microsoft was like, no, like that's not going to sell. So they just decided to make their own company and launch a Kickstarter, and the Kickstarter was wildly successful. And now, to be fair, Rare's working on, they're working on this pirate game called Sea of Thieves. And it's an Xbox game. You play as a bunch of pirates with your friends in like an online format, and you all man a ship together, and it looks very promising.
It looks like a sick game. I'm actually really pumped for Sea of Thieves. I think games that utilize like the online space and are about forging social connections are really interesting.
Is it like Pirate 101?
I don't know what that is.
You've ever seen the commercials for Wizard 101?
Oh, yes, I have.
So we reviewed Pirate 101 our like first year we ever did this show.
You mean Wizard 101?
Same.
Oh,
okay. And one of our hosts did some research and found that they do exist in the same universe. It's just the pirates are up here in the clouds because it's all airship pirate
Sky
ships.
Pirates.
Okay.
Sky pirates. And then the wizards are all down
gosh.
below in a place called the Realm or something.
Does the magic not work in like low atmosphere?
I think there might be some, but I don't know.
They stepped on some toes with Wizard 101. They said some things that weren't so kind.
Is there like a Wizard 101 like fan community?
I guess
so. They came out of the woodwork.
There's like two reviews of the show.
They came out of the woodwork to poop on us.
What is the community for this game?
I don't know. We were just goofing around with it. It was like literally the first season of the show. This is like 5 years later.
How dare you shit talk Wizard 101? How could you? My favorite game.
Yeah, right.
I'm sorry, guys.
So in any case, Yooka-Laylee is out now.
Yes, that's what this episode is about.
That's what we're talking about. And so you've played it.
Yes.
Obviously, people are drawing comparisons to Banjo-Kazooie.
As they should.
And to Donkey Kong 64.
Yeah.
And I think the both of the strengths of this game and the complaints about this game are that it's very similar to those games, which is what it set out to do.
Absolutely.
So what is your feeling after having spent 25 hours with the game about like the goals that they had initially set and whether or not they reached them?
So one of the big things Playtonic talked about when they were marketing this game is that we're going to revolutionize the 3D platformer and we're going to put it back on the map as like a genre that people want to play. And I really like this game, but like I don't think it did that. I feel like it's a really fun 3D platformer, but I think its biggest strength and simultaneously biggest weakness is that it feels just like an N64 game.
Yeah.
And either that's going to appeal to you or it's not going to appeal to you.
So they didn't revolutionize anything.
No.
They just made another one.
They made another one, and it's great. It feels like it feels like you could just boot it up on the N64 and play around with it for a while, but a lot of the problems that were present with games like Banjo-Kazooie or DK64 are still entirely present in this game.
So you think Banjo, Conker, Donkey Kong, Yooka, all like they belong in the same sentence. They're all
they all
just
feel very similar.
Yeah,
and I think that's great. I think they really captured a lot of the same kind of humor and gameplay that was present in the older games. But I guess a lot of people were looking for something more modern.
I think a lot of times with these Kickstarter things, people get it in their heads that this is going to be like the greatest thing ever. You know, like there's just so much hype.
Yeah.
But it is just a game. It is, you know, you already have Banjo-Tooie. It's either in your Xbox Live library or sitting on your shelf. You know, it's like at the end of the day, it's just gonna be more of that. It's not gonna like blow your mind. It's not gonna change your life.
I don't know what people expected because I was very excited about this game. I thought about it almost every day. I made the puppet. I made fan art. I did the cosplay, and I was like, my expectations were totally met. But then I read other people like who were talking about this, and they're like, "This isn't at all what I wanted." It's like, well, what did you want?
I gave you my money, and I wanted exactly what I wanted.
Yeah, and it's strange to me.
Some people don't know what they want. I think. Let's talk about your puppet.
Oh, sure. Yeah, we can talk about Laylee.
What is this puppet?
So this is Laylee from the game, and I want to say like 2 years ago now, I made her for a costume at Comic-Con, and like puppets are kind of just a thing I do in my free time, as I try to get my hand in her and get it to work. But she's got like a lot of articulation and stuff, and I just kind of did her as a side thing, and I didn't really expect anyone to notice or care because like I'm not a professional in any sense of the word. And a lot of people took my picture and it got back to Playtonic. And next thing I knew, they shared it on their Facebook page, and they're like, "Yo, check out this cosplayer who did this sweet Yooka-Laylee cosplay." And I was like, "Oh my god!" And I like commented on it, and I was like, "Thanks for sharing my work. Here's a bunch of like progress shots so I can prove that I did the puppet." And the next day, they sent another message. They're like, "Why don't you email us? We got something in store for you." And I got in contact with them, and they asked if I would like the first ever
That's
the shirt, the first ever non-developer Playtonic shirt, and they sent that to me from Britain, and it's lovely, and I wear it a lot.
Lovely.
Yeah. So obviously, I'm pretty invested in this game before it even came out. So yeah, you're like examining it.
I think it's pretty sweet.
Yeah,
for sure.
I mean, it's a little wrinkled
High
right
quality,
now.
High quality. Well
High
made.
quality Playtonic merchandise.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did you wear
I wore the hoodie.
the hoodie?
And the hoodie was made for me by my friend Maya, and she did a good job on that. Hi, Maya. And she was the one who was really excited when we posted the first video.
Oh.
Because I know that really tickled you when she posted all the comments. It was like, "Oh, this is so cool!" But
She's the president of Julie's fan club.
Yeah. I was supposed to say that. But no, she helped me with the whole thing. They sent her a shirt too, and I sent them this big fan message. It was like, "Oh my god, like my childhood, like Diddy Kong Racing and Viva Pinata are like so important to me." So like,
yeah, because it's important to know that these are the people that made those games.
Oh, totally.
It's like they got many of the major players that were involved in creating the characters and the stories and the gameplay for the 1990s Rare games, and
almost all the primary members of they had, like not the exact same team, but most of the key players of who they had in the 90s.
In terms of the characters and the art design of these games, how well does it stand up to?
I like it a lot more. I think one of the biggest strengths of Yooka-Laylee is the evolution of the art design. Because, like, I know there's something retro about, like, the old blocky characters now. But it transitioned really well into, like, a modern 3D space. And I love the environments in this game. They're beautiful.
Yeah. I think a lot of people were critical in some of the reviews of, like, oh, like, these characters don't have a lot of depth. I'm not attached to them the way I was when I was a kid, and it's like...
It's because you're not playing it when you're 8 anymore.
It's like, can you explain the character arc of Humbawamba to me? Like, you mean, like, what...
She's got a deep and intricate backstory. Which isn't to say these aren't, like, fun characters, but, like, they're very the same as they were in the N64 days.
Yeah, it's like if you're going to be critical of, Dr. Puzz for being one-dimensional, it's like...
It's like,
what is your baseline here?
Yeah.
Like, this isn't, a literary work, that explores the depths of humanity. But
certainly not. Like,
what I'm trying to say.
It's always been a game marketed towards, like, very young kids. And, like, if you're still a young kid at heart, yeah, you'll enjoy this. But it's still got, like, that colorful, like, almost like Saturday morning cartoon feel to it. I think it's weird because I almost feel like I have to be the person who defends this game. And this game is not perfect by any means, but, like, the amount of people who were disappointed and are hating on it for things that aren't even relevant to the gameplay, like the JonTron controversy that happened, like, and that's, like, leeching into people's view on the game itself, which is just not fair.
So let's talk about that. Like, a lot of people, and I think this is related to the controversy with JonTron, which we won't talk about too much because I'm sure there's plenty of corners of the web where people can get as much info as they want on that.
That's very true.
People are criticizing this game for trying to make a political statement. Like, what's the core of that argument? What are people talking about?
That actually has exactly to do with the JonTron thing, because they thought that censoring him was the game trying to say something about its political views, which I really don't think it is. They just didn't want to, like...
Yeah, like they took him out of the game specifically to not be connected to that discussion.
Yeah. And I guess not being a player in that is a political move. It's very strange.
It is. Like, he put them in an awkward situation for sure, where they had to either, endorse him by including him, or say something about him by removing him from the game, right? Like, not doing anything would be tacit endorsement, so, like, they had to take action, and like, it's understandable what they did. I mean, whether or not you agree with it.
Yeah, the whole situation's messy, but it's, like, it shouldn't affect your enjoyment of the game. Like, it's just kind of something that happened, unfortunate as it is. So, there was really no winning.
It's a nasty situation.
Damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Yeah.
Right.
So no matter what, people are going to be mad at Playtonic.
But there's no, like, nothing in this game is making a political... it's not, like, nobody's comparing capital B to Trump, right? Like, it's not...
I mean, he looks like Gru from Despicable Me, but, like, no one's comparing him to Trump. No, like, this game makes fart jokes, and there's a snake named after a wiener. Like, it's not a political statement.
Right. I think some of the other criticisms that people have leveled the game are that the camera, it doesn't hold up. I mean, so 3D platformers have always had a camera issue.
That's very true.
I think that games like Uncharted and Assassin's Creed did a really good job of curtailing their camera issues, but they kind of did that by not... Like, they have very samey, streamlined gameplay. Like, the platforming, so to speak, in those games is, like, you grappling to a point that says, I can be grappled, and then jumping to a very specific other point that can also be grappled.
Right, there's not as much freedom of motion.
The camera can be scripted almost at all times and how it moves. So how did you feel about the controls and the response in this game? Did it feel... Like, how often were you frustrated with the game for not letting you move the way you wanted to?
Very seldomly, but I feel like I might be in the minority in that respect.
Yeah.
A lot of people online seem very dissatisfied with it. They don't like the camera motion. They're comparing it to games like Super Mario 64, which is not a fair comparison, because in Super Mario 64, your camera is an actual character. It's like a little Lakitu that follows you around, and, like, it can get stuck on things. It's, like, one of the worst cameras in gaming. Like, amazing for the time, but, like...
Right.
Not a fair comparison.
I mean, that game basically had to invent what a 3D camera should be.
Yeah.
So the camera had collision physics?
Yes. Ridiculous, right? Like, who would even I don't know who decided that would be a thing, but like it's silly. But
and to me, just from watching you play a little bit, it seems like the camera. I don't know if they did change any camera code in the day one patch, but it certainly feels like they did, because when I look at playthroughs online from before the day one, like the early review versions, it seems like there's a lot more jerky camera movements. Like it looked a lot smoother from what I saw. There
was definitely moments. I think the camera behaves squirrely specifically on ramps, any section, because it kind of like tries to track with you, and it sort of like bobs up and down when you're going up and down a ramp, and that was the really problem part.
There's like springiness in there, and it like
yeah. I don't know what's going on with that, but I had almost no trouble throughout the rest of the game, because you can even go into options, so you can adjust the sensitivity on how fast you're swinging around your camera. So like I just, as soon as I booted it up, I did that, and then it felt natural to me. It felt better than most 3D platformers.
And I think the second biggest criticism that's been leveled against the game are the mini games.
Oh yes.
Mostly the minecart stuff, but also the other little games that kind of pull you out of platforming and make you do other stuff. Some people are really frustrated by those things. They say, like, I gotta do these stupid repetitive tasks that are almost impossible, blah, blah, blah. Do you think that was a problem with design?
I will say that I don't think it's great that you have to play them twice, because you get a pagey, the main collectible in the game, once for just completing the minigame, but you also get a second one for beating the high score of the character Rextro. Okay. So there's one of these on every world, and you do have to play this minigame that you might not be a fan of 2 times.
But even if you beat the high score the first time, you don't get that.
It doesn't count.
Yeah.
The first try is just you going through to do whatever you have to do. And they're not great. I'm not going to defend these too harshly, but like, I didn't find them difficult. I don't think I had to play one more than 4 times total, and they're really short. Like, the mild inconvenience of Rextro's minigames has nothing on what they had you do back in the day.
Also, like, I think that I see a lot of user reviews, like, you have to do these minigames over and over again.
It's no, you don't.
Nobody's, like, chaining you to the
Do you want to get 100%?
Right.
Sure.
I mean, like, in any game, there's going to be, like, something repetitive you have to do to get everything in the game done, but, like, you can go...
You don't have to do a single one of Rextro's minigames to get capital B.
And it is kind of the nature of these collectathon platformers that like getting everything is kind of the point, right?
It's fun.
You know, you're not gonna like when you play Breath of the Wild, you're just like, I can go anywhere, do anything. You know, nobody's really complaining about this game like I have to do every shrine, because it just doesn't feel like that. You just kind of feel like you have the freedom to go where you want. But like a game like Yooka-Laylee is kind of directing you to like go find everything. You know, here's some things, you can find all of these. Here's some other things, try to find all of those.
There isn't a ton to do because of the scope of 3D platformers, so it does feel satisfying to do all of the things. But like in DK64, that stupid classic Donkey Kong minigame, you had to do that to fight K. Rool.
Yeah.
You had to get a coin from that would open up the last door of the game. Rextro's minigames don't have to do a single one.
Do you think the main criticism of Rextro's minigames is that they're not good enough?
Yes.
Yeah.
And I will, like, they're not super fun, but you don't have to do them.
Now, what are these mini games?
So, Rextro 64 is like brings you to these arcade machines where you can like play like these little mini games and compete for prizes.
Yeah, his whole point is he's supposed to be a character who's like stuck in the 90s, and he's made out of like very harsh lines, and like his model's all jaggy and really stuff, and like. Polygon. When you play his arcade games, he's like, make sure to insert your memory card. And he like has all these nice old references, but like his minigames aren't super great. They're not the worst, but like I'm not gonna go back and play them for fun.
Why didn't you go and make them?
I would have preferred.
Why didn't you go and do it?
I'll say a little bit. I would have preferred actually if they had just like straight up taken like some old like 2600 games and just like sprite swapped them, you know, with like something different to and made those the Rextro games.
They actually feel quite similar to that. They do feel like retro games.
Well,
but...
what are the things this game does right? What feels good?
The movement feels very satisfying. You have more range of motion than you did in Banjo-Kazooie, which is good because the levels are a lot bigger than they were in Banjo-Kazooie. So, like your basic jump that will take you from platform to platform is quite long. One of the big things that people either love or hate is the last ability you get in the game is the flight pad that you would have had from Banjo-Kazooie, but you do not need a pad to do it off of, and you can do it anywhere you want anytime you want.
So you just fly around.
You can just fly. And obviously that prevents a huge issue as a platformer because, like, it immediately brings up the problem of trivializing,
yeah.
what I'm looking for?
Trivializing
any platforming segment because it's just like, oh, how do I get up to there? Oh, I can fly.
Right.
But the last level is the first level in the game, I think, built with the idea that you can fly that whole level, that you have access to that ability anytime. And it's really clever because any segment that wants you to do platforming will be like surrounded in glass. So like you'll have to go in and you have to platform that way anyway. Like that's more precision than just flying around.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of one of the other things that people talk about in this game is they do not like the level size. A lot of people...
They don't like how big they are.
They don't like how big they are. Because a lot of people... It's a weird criticism, right? They don't feel like there is enough to do in how big the worlds are. They feel very
They feel like
vast.
the levels don't justify their size with like enough content.
Yeah. And I see what they're saying, but as soon as you get flight, the levels feel totally surmountable.
Yeah.
Like anywhere you see, you're like, oh, I'll just go there.
I understand, like, they give you this ability in the end game, right?
Yes.
That kind of makes you feel... Like, I always... In Spyro, you do those flight missions, and I always hoped that, like, at the end of the game, they'd be like, and now you can fly, you know? Because, like, it just feels like, you know...
It feels like the natural progression of
things. It feels like you've
things.
achieved something, right? You're
Yes.
like, oh, I'm the best, and now I get to do this. Do you think, though, that is going to make it... Like, if they ever wanted to add DLC, which added more levels, they're going to have to consider that you can fly on them, right?
Absolutely. And it's weird because I feel like a lot of the reasons the level feel empty is when you're starting is because they consider that on every world. Every world, they're like, okay, eventually you're going to have flight.
Yeah.
Here's what we should do for that, which I think is a big design challenge for a developer, just being like, oh, our characters are going to be able to go anywhere they want to go. And I should bring up the casino level, which nobody likes, and I get it. I get...
Why? Why does nobody like the casino level?
Because no one...
Who doesn't want to go gambling with a bat and a lizard?
Because that's no one's fantasy world. No one's like, I know what I want to do.
They have
Go
fun.
to the casino.
They have gambling in Pokemon?
And yet hundreds of thousands of people every day go to the casino.
It's true, and I guarantee they have almost no overlap with the 3D platforming community.
Yeah, you're right. I can't go to like an awesome frozen mountain IRL very easily, but I can just get in my car and drive to Atlantic City.
Yeah.
But I think to be serious, the complaints about Casino are not like that it's a casino. It's like the way they made it, how it's like big but you're small. And it's just like there's like not a lot of detail because I'm just walking around on a carpet. You know, and it has to like look like a casino, but then like the scale it's at is like I'm a little lizard.
So there can't be any terrain alteration because you're in a carpeted room and it's a casino.
Yeah.
And you don't really feel as small in the other worlds because if you walk next to a big ice thing, you're like, oh, that's a big ice thing. And if you're jumping on roulette tables, you're like, I am very small.
In the other worlds, there's trees that make Yooka seem human-sized.
Yes.
And then he walks into a casino made by capital B, who's the same size as him.
Yeah.
But it's like sized as if he were like a 10-inch tall lizard.
It's not great.
It didn't make a lot of sense.
No. And I think there's parts
weird.
of the casino that feel very good, but they're kind of when you go outside the main room and you go in these other sections where there's small platforming bits to do.
Yeah.
Or this or that. And the casino is definitely, I didn't hate it, but it is the weakest level.
Yeah.
And I agree with people who say that.
What's the mission objective in the casino?
Well, it's the same as every other
You're
levels.
jumping around on stuff.
Show up, get quills, collect pages, leave. It's just like explore it and leave. But that's how
Can you play?
There are mini games to play. None of them are particularly engaging. Like there's a slot machine where you ground pound on the buttons to make Yooka-Laylee faces across it, and it's...
But like, you have to find that one slot machine. The rest are all just... inanimate, interactive.
You can interact with everything. Everything you see that you're like, I could probably interact with that. You can do that. So it's not frustrating in that sense.
If you watch a video of it, it's like very empty feeling. It's like
Is there anybody there?
Yeah. There's a slot machine.
There's
enemies
like that'll attack you, but it's like it's just weird. Like it's hard to describe, but you look at it and it's like it just doesn't feel heavily populated enough. Like when you're in a real casino, there's like sound and lights and like just rows of slot machines and people everywhere. And this just feels like it's like a casino after dark, and the only people there are the janitorial staff, and they take half the machines and mail them out. You know what I mean? Like it's just like it's strange.
And I would say a lot of people's problem with the casino is also the bugginess of it, because unfortunately, as much as I like this game, this is not a polished game. There are bugs here and there, and one of the biggest ones is the way the casino level works is you collect tokens and you trade in 10 tokens for a pagey. But when the game is doing the checks when you're turning in the tokens, it saves after you turn in the tokens and then again after it awards the pagey to you. So if you manage to crash the game during that segment, you can lose out on a pagey and bar yourself from 100% completion. You will always be missing one in that world. And that did not happen to me. And I don't think it's happened to a lot of people, but it's just the fact that it can happen.
Sure.
So that's a problem.
I think for any Kickstarter game, you're going to get people who are like, I paid for this.
Yes.
And I wanted what I wanted. And I didn't get that.
Yeah.
That's true. Is there any way, like, I don't think any games that have been Kickstarter so far have avoided that kind of criticism.
Shovel Knight?
Shovel Knight, I think, is a pretty good Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Undertale was a Kickstarter that I think delivered on a lot of its promises. Amplitude was a game I kickstarted.
I think a lot of people weren't happy with Amplitude, though.
Really?
I mean, it definitely didn't have wide appeal. There weren't that many people.
I don't think it sold well, but I think anyone who backed it was...
I think outside of the Kickstarter, it sold virtually no copies.
Which is a shame. That's a good game.
Yeah.
You can go back to the original Kickstarter goals for this game and scroll through the list, and the only thing they didn't deliver on was releasing on Wii U. And that's because they released on the Switch instead.
Right.
And people were upset about that, but they offered a Switch to platform of your choice for any Wii U users, and they offered a refund if you weren't into that. So, I think that's as much as you can do. You don't want to release on a dead console, so...
I mean,
seemed fair.
So, this game could not have been made without Kickstarter.
Totally, yeah. Because when it was getting started, it was 6 guys. And they just had an office, and they're like, we want to make a game. We left Rare. We're looking to make something kind of like the Banjo-Kazooie era. We're looking for $250,000.
Yeah.
And if we don't get it, we're still going to make it just because it's a labor of love. We're just saying if we can get helped along a little bit.
Yeah.
And they made $2.5 million.
Right. 10 times their goal.
Yeah. So... It was wildly successful, which is great because then they increased the scope of everything.
I hope they manage to translate. It'll be interesting to see, between their Kickstarter success and then the controversial reviews it's gotten, what people think of this game down the line and what kind of support it gets post-launch. Because so many games now release and then are more of a platform than a single game, right? Like Mario Kart already had 2 major DLC upgrades. Now it's getting a second release on a new console and more content along with that.
That's true.
Microsoft just announced that every Xbox for the foreseeable future is going to be compatible with all the Xbox One games that are out right now. And they're kind of turning all of their yearly release games into more of a game platform than a game. They want to...
I see what you're saying, though. And yeah, DLC is confirmed for this game. That was a stretch goal that they met.
Yeah.
So they're definitely going to be building on stuff. I'm already really happy that before launch they went and addressed the frame rate issues. And they do seem like a company who's genuinely interested in what their fans have to say and what changes they can make to keep bettering the game. Yeah. So.
It's funny because for a game like this, I'd almost rather see Yooka-Laylee than or Yooka-Laylee.
Yooka-Laylee.
I'd much rather see Yooka-Laylee.
In the same vein as banjo-kazooie.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Make a new game.
Yeah. I'd almost rather see them make a sequel than just keep adding on to this one because that's kind of how it used to work, and I feel
and I think they will
if
the fan want is there for it. If they think people will buy it and they will enjoy it, they will certainly make it. And it's a little sad that it wasn't as well received as it could have been because I think that they delivered on everything they promised they would. The only thing that I find a little unfortunate about it is the scope of it's so big that it's just not quite polished. I encountered a few bugs when I was playing. Nothing game-breaking, but definitely things that took you out of the experience.
I think it's also kind of interesting that people are kind of bringing back platformers, but it's what about Mario Galaxy? That game's that's not that old.
Mario Galaxy is great. Ratchet & Clank came out last year, the reboot. That was really fun. Psychonauts 2 is happening right now. It's there's still a genre that's out there. You just missed the Rareware spin on it, which is definitely present in this game. Yeah.
Sure. it's easy to look at Yooka-Laylee in the frame of the 90s games it's trying to emulate and say that it does some things well, does some things differently. I like this, I don't like that. But I'd also like to frame it in like what platformer games are like now. And like, I think it's like arguably the most popular platformer game out right now is Assassin's Creed. Oddly, you know, like Assassin's Creed is a lot of genres kind of mixed together. It's a little bit of an RPG. It's a little bit of a platformer. It's a little bit of like a action brawler. But and I've played a lot of those games. But I also want to kind of get a feel for like the really classic games like Mario Galaxy, like what they're doing now, and like I want to see how the camera controls in that game, right? Because like that's a game that the gameplay moves really similarly to Yooka-Laylee, like just in terms of like the flow of it, and like to see how they've handled keeping that stuff interesting. I don't know. I'm interested. I like from what I've seen, it's like Mario is a lot more linear. Like it's like jumping puzzle after jumping puzzle, and you're not doing as much backtracking to collect things. It's more just like how do I get through this part right now?
Yeah. And what you'll find is Mario is like a way more put together fun experience. But what people aren't factoring in is that, like, yeah, this game was made by veterans, but, like, it's a really small studio and not a big budget.
I don't know. I'm surprised. Well, I'm not surprised that people don't like it, because some people are just whiny and they will look for controversy and then latch onto it to try to, stand on their soapbox. But like, it surprises me how many people are jumping on that bandwagon, because it seems to me like the game they delivered is like basically the game that any reasonable person would have expected from that Kickstarter.
I was really surprised too, because in almost every sense it feels like a Banjo-Kazooie sequel. And maybe the big mark against it is a lot of people who wanted this Banjo sequel just haven't played a Banjo game in a long time. Like, they have these fond memories of this experience when they were a kid, but they don't remember all the less fun or not quite polished things that came with that.
That's true.
And like I've revisited N64 games often. Like I talked about Rocket Robot on Wheels when I was on the podcast the other time, and like I played DK64 last year, and like, yeah, this game improves on a lot of things, but if you're not super familiar with the genre it's coming from, you might have forgotten how they were. I think that's a good point to bring up.
How does Yooka-Laylee rank among your favorite platforming games?
All of them, Julie. Everyone you've ever
Every
touched.
single one. Put them in order.
If you had a top 5, would it make the cut?
I think it would be in the top 5. I think the characterization and the abilities are really fun, and exploring is great, even if the polish isn't quite there on the game that I want to be there. I don't like it as much as Psychonauts, but I do like it more than original Banjo-Kazooie. And I think original...
Really?
Yeah. Which is strange to say. I know that's something that not a lot of
now
people
we're going to get
agree
lots
with.
of hate mail about how wrong you are,
and
Julie.
I love Banjo-Kazooie, but in this game, I know that graphics aren't everything, but it is way more pleasant to look at. I think even though Laylee is exactly like Kazooie, and Yooka is exactly like Banjo, I think the abilities and exploring the world are just more fun than they were in Banjo-Kazooie. I think it's a good game that has the potential to be a great game if more things were tweaked, but like, it's still good, and people are being so hard on it for succeeding in a lot of things that it does.
And like, I mean, people have to consider that like the budget it was made on of like, single-digit millions is a fraction of the games that like Mario Galaxy probably had 50 or 100 million thrown at it. And Grand Theft Auto is made on a budget of like $250 or $300 million.
And I have seen people firsthand on message boards complain that Yooka-Laylee had a huge budget and should be better for it. And like, $2.5 million is not a lot to make a full-fledged game on. And also, half that money is going towards reward fulfillment for the Kickstarter.
Exactly. And if they had a team of 30 people, like $3 million funds that team for... 3 years? 2 years?
Yeah.
2 years.
And that's how long they spent on the game. The game was supposed to release in October, and they delayed it a little longer just to kind of like flesh it out more. And I do think it would have benefited from cooking longer than it did, but I don't think they wanted to disappoint anyone further.
I think people are complaining that it only has 5 levels. And I think if the team had time to make 10 levels that were half the size, they would have done that. But 10 levels that are half the size would have been a lot more work. Way more assets, way more creative time spent designing them, and that stuff's not cheap. So I think 5 levels that are large was like a smart way to cut costs and make a game that had the length that they wanted to give it.
No, I agree. And it's a lot longer than Banjo-Kazooie was because of that. Like, there's 145 major collectibles to collect instead of 100.
I think part of it is like the most exciting moments in Banjo are like every time you walk into a new level, right? Like there's like 9 levels, and every time when you're like Clanker's Cavern, all this place is gross.
Yeah.
This is spoopy, like that.
When you first swim into the room with Clanker in it, and he's just looking at you, and you're like, whoa!
Yeah, like those first moments of exploring levels are way more exciting than the subsequent hours spent running around in them.
Yep.
So like I think people feel a little bit robbed of that, but
I understand that criticism.
I think like with the constraints this team is working on, it's fair. Maybe again, I've said this a lot about a lot of games. Maybe a $40 price point wasn't the smartest thing. Maybe if this game were $20 or $30, they would have more people. Like I'll admit that I was a little thrown off by the $40. Like I thought this was going to be like a $25 game, and I wasn't like ready to jump on it right away and spend $40 on it. Like I was going to play this game the day it came out, and then like when I saw 40, I was like, oh, maybe I'll wait for like a Steam sale or something,
Now I think 40 is totally fair. I get that it's bigger than you expect.
40 is fair if you're going to finish this game and you're going to get all 25 hours of completing it out of it.
Which is what I did.
From my point of view, I was like, I might play this game for 5 hours and then not anymore. Because I like the idea of it. I like the characters. I like the design. Platformer gameplay is not really like my jam. I probably finish each level and unlock all the abilities, but I'm never going to go back and 100% it.
And that's fair.
So from my point of view, like I think $20 would be better. And I don't know how much of a bigger audience they'd find though at that price point if it's worth it for them.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think that there's definitely $40 worth of content in it, but I do understand that price point might scare people away. So I get what you're saying. I don't know, man. Try Yooka-Laylee. If you've heard a review that's really negative, this is one of those games where like just know if you like 3D platformers or not. If you've played them before and you liked them, it's probably for you. It's if you don't like 3D platformers, it's not going to convert any new fans. But I think it's good. I think they set out to do what they did, and they did it. And that's all I can say.
So we're saying it's not a 2 out of 10?
I don't agree with that.
12 out of 10.
Jim's entitled to his opinion, but
yeah, he's allowed to think what he thinks, but I'm allowed to not agree with that at all. So.
Yeah. All right. So this is we put the pressure on number score. I want number out of 10. No decimals. We're not messing around with that.
Number out of 10?
Mm-hmm.
It's an 8. But
8 out of 10.
It could and should be a 9 if they went in.
If they go back and sort things out.
Yes.
Patch things up.
I absolutely think so.
All right. Cool.
Let's see.
Oh, is that it? Is that right there? Is that the rating?
Is that it?
Is it?
Is that it right there?
Wow, 8 out of 10.
That's pretty. 8 out of 10. That's a game I would try. That seems like a fair rating for a game.
If you want to see more of Last Coin at the Arcade, listen to our weekly podcast. It's available on iTunes and the podcast app Stitcher and on the Google Play Store. Give us any feedback that you have for us in the comments down below or on our website, psychojellyfish.com, our Twitter @Jellycast, or our Facebook page, PsychoJellyfish. And we'd love to hear anything you have to say for us, any suggestions you have for future video or podcast content. We're happy to hear it.
Yeah, and thanks for having me.
Thanks for coming, Julie, and bringing your...
Hey, it's rare that you get the biggest fan in the world on the same couch as you, so we're real happy to have you here.
Yeah, it's fun to come and play, that's for sure. It's good to spread the good word of Yooka-Laylee, which is apparently rare.
All right.
No pun intended on that one.
Keep it psycho, guys. Thanks for watching.
Bye.